it's bright. I can't see you at all. Okay. Well, I'm fresh off the boat. I came from Montreal, and you could probably still smell the Montreal bagels and smoked meat and poutine on me if you wanted to. You probably don't want to, but if you did, I probably still smell like that. And I came here for an opportunity, very last moment. So I had just a couple of days to find a place to live, and I decided the easiest, fastest way would just to go on Airbnb on the website and to get a fully furnished place, get here and worry about it later. So I found this nice old lady that had a very tastefully decorated from the pictures apartment in Rosedale. And I took my car and I came here. And it's not really my taste. There's a very, very tasteful, seductive picture of her late husband, I think, on next to the bed that I look at before going to sleep every night. I should also mention that she's not there. She's out of town, just in case you're getting the wrong idea. But her husband is there in spirit. And there are pictures of her grandchildren, I assume, all over the walls, and very touching notes saying, "We miss you, Grandma," on the wall. So there's very tasteful, soft pastel paintings of cats in the hallway. Not really my style, and I feel like a fish out of water here. So the only thing that's actually mine that I brought with me from Montreal are these Russian dolls that I've set up by her liquor cabinet, and she's pretty well stocked for an old lady, by the window. And for those of you who don't know, Russian dolls, they're these egg-shaped, painted dolls made of wood from Russia. And basically you take their head and their feet and you rip them apart. And creepily enough, inside is a shrunken, identical version of what you've just destroyed, looking up at you, saying hello. And then if you want to keep going, you take that one out and you decapitate that one, and there's an even smaller, identical one saying hello. And you can keep going for about 5 more times. This has been delighting Russian children for a millennium. And I have them pretty much as a substitute for all the pictures of my family that I should have, because I could get nostalgic or homesick, and it's just too overt to have a picture of my family smiling at me. So I have these dolls there because I feel metaphorically it represents me and then my parents that are inside of me and their parents going back, like the Russian dolls. And this way I don't get too sad. And I've had these when I moved to London, England a few years ago. I had them when I moved to Israel for a summer. And that's the story that I want to tell, or actually I don't want to talk to you about Israel, but I want to talk to you about the day that I left Israel. And I woke up in the morning, and it was about 4 or 5 in the morning. There was no sun. I had packed the night before, and I went to the edge of this small village in the desert, which had a perimeter fence around it, because it's not the safest country in places. And there was a security guard sitting there with a gun on his lap, and he had a scar down his face, and I didn't really want to stop long enough to ask him how he got that. But I waited for the cab, and it finally came, and he was playing this very loud music that kind of sounded like tss, 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 tss. And that's actually a complete reproduction of what it sounded like. Exactly like that, maybe with more rhythm. And he helps me with my bags, and I get into the taxi with him, and we start driving, and I ask him how much is the taxi, because you have to negotiate everything in the Middle East. And I quickly realized that he doesn't speak any English, and I don't speak any Hebrew or Arabic or whatever language he spoke. I did not speak it. So he just looks at me and kind of grunts. So I take my wallet out, and I take out about 200 shekels, which I thought was a good price, and I passed it to him, and he starts to count it while driving. And he's driving and he's counting it very slowly, and I'm terrified that we're going to die. But eventually he finishes counting it, and he nods and he puts it in his pocket and smiles. And I think then we're both very proud of ourselves for having come to this agreement without language. And we drive through the darkened desert for about an hour, listening to the music very loudly. And I can see outside the Mediterranean on my right, and it's just starting to be sunrise. There's just a little trickle of light coming. And he sees on my lap, I have these Russian dolls, and they're not identical dolls. They're actually literary dolls that I got in St. Petersburg. There's Fyodor Dostoevsky's the biggest one. And then if you crack him open, then there's Tolstoy. And then under him, there's Pushkin, and then there's a noseless Gogol, which anyone who gets that reference, I guess they're clever, whoever did those dolls. And I had these dolls, which are the ones I have in Toronto now. They were sitting on my lap and kind of poking out of my carry-on bag. And he looks at me with a strange look. So I say, knowing he probably doesn't understand, it's Fyodor Dostoevsky. And he looks at me, and to my surprise, he says, "Crime and Punishment." And I nod, and then he says it a little bit louder, "Crime and Punishment." And I nod, and he goes, "Crime and Punishment." And then he just stops the car in the middle of the desert. There's no one around. And he reaches into the glove compartment, and he takes out a machete. And then he cuts the engine. And there's no more but I didn't really focus on that. He then gets out of the car, mumbling to himself, "Crime and punishment, crime and punishment." And he motions with the machete for me to join him outside. I wasn't very happy with how this was turning out. This was not in my game plan. I was trying to go to the airport. But what was I going to do? So he took the keys with him. I got out of the car, and he starts to slowly come towards me with the knife. And I'm just thinking, does he want to reenact Crime and Punishment? Because in the beginning of that book, the protagonist kills this person for money, and I did not want to go through that with him. He gets close to me, and I'm thinking maybe Dostoevsky and Tolstoy and these other dolls are the only witnesses I'm going to have to whatever's about to happen. And he comes with the machete very close to me, to almost grazing my nose, and then hands me the knife. And mumbling to himself, goes into the back of the car and opens up the trunk, and he takes out a book, and he hands it to me, and it says in English and in Russian, Dostoevsky, Crime and Punishment. And he's very excited. So I'm also very excited for different reasons, because I'm still alive. But I guess, it's a great coincidence. And then he takes out some cheese, and I start to cut the cheese with the knife. That wasn't a joke. And then he takes out some Turkish coffee, which he had stored in a little thermos, and we stop at the side of the road to have some Turkish coffee as the sun's slowly coming up over the Mediterranean. And we can't speak to each other, so we just nod, and he keeps pointing to Crime and Punishment. And it's a really great memory that I have. And then we eventually got back into the cab, and he drove me to the airport, and away I went. And I know that for you, it's probably very kitschy that I have these Russian dolls. And for me, I don't see that when I look at them. I look at them and I see that sunrise, and I can taste the Turkish coffee. I look at them and I can see my family and reflecting off of them. I look at them and I see them looking back at me with their unblinking, painted on, unforgiving, judgmental, sad Russian author eyes. And I realize that they've watched me go through a lot, and they've watched me as I've moved around and met people, and that they're watching me now in Toronto as I spread my wings and try to learn to fly amongst the skyscrapers and the cranes here. Well, thank you.